Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to review my latest non-fiction book, The Gnostic Gospels, by Elaine Pagels, author of the best-selling author of Beyond Belief, which I haven't read. There's a little blurb on the front here from the New Yorker. An intellectually elegant, concise study, the economy with which Pagels evokes the world of early Christianity is a marvel. And I would have to agree with that assessment from the New Yorker. Now, during this review today, I am unfortunately very likely going to step on some theistic toes. It is not my intent. However, the topic of this book and what it brings to mind and how important I think it is going to lead me down that path. And when I say this is an important book, I mean it. This is profound. Now, I was aware of the Gnostic Gospels. The Gnostic Gospels were a series of Gospels, 13 of them, that were discovered in 1945 by a farmer. He was Muhammad Ali. What was his name? Or is his name? I don't know if he's actually still alive or not. And he was looking for a particular kind of earth for his farm. I guess it's particularly good at fertilizing the type of plants he was growing. And in the process, he discovered a sealed ceramic container. Now, at first, he was concerned that it may have held a jinn, and he did not want to release it in case he would be cursed. But he also thought there's a possibility that it holds gold. Well, he cracks it open and pulls out a number of parchment rolls. No gold. Takes them home, dumps them down, and unfortunately, his mother burns at least 2 of them. So we lost something right there. But eventually, through a number of different circumstances, they found their way into the hands of people who realized what they were. And part of one of them made itself way out of the Middle East and made it all the way to Europe. In fact, rather an amusing portion of the book, the person that purchased it needed to bring it into Belgium. And it was purchased illegally, essentially. And he knew this. And he knew that he could get stopped at the border and have it confiscated. So he decided to be completely and utterly honest. When the customs officer asked him what was in the package, he said, an old manuscript. 1,300 years old, but, you know, he was right. It was an old manuscript, and he waltzed right on through. Now, eventually, all of these were translated and made available to the public. In fact, the author of the book was part of the team that did some of the translation from Coptic Egyptian into English. These show a much different picture of the life of Jesus Christ and the early Christian church. In the time of the first 3 centuries of our current era, when the church was being founded, when the Catholic Church, the concept of an all-encompassing church, was just being formed. And there was more Gospels than you will find in this book. Lots more Gospels. And additional texts written that were talking about that time period that were not proper Gospels. And they give a different view of the world. And if Christianity had followed those texts, the Gnostic Gospels, the world would be a much different place. In this, Jesus is portrayed very much as a Buddhist-like character, very much like Buddha himself, extolling a concept of esoteric internal worship as opposed to exoteric external worship. Of knowing yourself, that self-ignorance is the only sin, and that you have to know who you are before you can find a path to God. In addition, there were concepts in these Gospels that dealt with the fact that God was viewed explicitly as both male and female, as opposed to what eventually became known as the Catholic Church as we know it today, which is a purely masculine view of the world. There also was the fact that a lot of the Gnostic groups had sexual equality. Women were allowed to do everything the men were. In fact, some of the groups even had, when they had meetings, they would draw lots, and whoever drew which lot would get to be the reader or the presentator. There were the different roles, the priests, the bishops, the deacons. Those roles would switch and move around from meeting to meeting, and it wouldn't matter whether you were male or female. Some of the Gnostics wanted to create their own church that would have had a structure different, but still had a structure like a church. They wanted to have, it would have been a two-tiered system where the lay believers would have not had Gnosis knowledge, and the more advanced members of the church would have had Gnosis or knowledge, and they would have been on the path to true enlightenment. But most of the Gnostic Gospels really were emphasizing that the Orthodox Church, that became the Catholic Church as we know it today, created a lesser form of worship. A form of worship that required the members to have a shopping list style of worship. You have to do these things and say these phrases and enact these rites. And if you do those things, you will be Christian and you will be saved. Nowhere in that process was spiritual enlightenment, self-discovery involved in the least. And some of the Gnostics looked down upon the Orthodox Christians for that reason. That because they had not studied within themselves for a relationship with Christ, that they would never actually achieve one. And a number of the Gnostic texts quote things that would sound perfectly at home in the office of any therapist, talking about having to know ourselves first. For example, the Gnostics didn't view Jesus Christ's death and resurrection as a literal event. They viewed it as a spiritual resurrection, that he is with us, that he is a living, breathing creature, that he did not die and was not physically reborn, that belief in and of itself was of the Orthodox Church and was of a lesser value than those who had realized that his death had been spiritual and those who had achieved Gnosis or knowledge. Now, this particular copy of the Bible I have here, nice leather cover, and it comes with a zipper that keeps it nice and safe. All the pages are in nice shape. It's very symbolic for me, because for me, this sealed book is a wonderful example of what this book is to me. It's a tomb. And within it is the entire religious experience of every Christian that holds it dear. That it traps them. That it prevents them from achieving spiritual enlightenment. That this is no more Jesus Christ than this picture is my friend Greg. They are both images, but they are not the people themselves. My friend Greg is alive and well and living in Maine. He is no longer 12. This is at best a biography of a person that lived once. It is not the path to a spiritual relationship with Christ. The Gnostics' relationship with Christ would have not only put them on par with Jesus Christ, but if you had followed it to its ultimate degree, you would have come to realize that you are Christ. That you are divinity itself. And that is a profoundly different view of Jesus Christ and Christianity. Now, if I had found this book 30 years ago, I may have become a follower of Jesus. Not a Christian, but a follower of the Gnostic Jesus. I would have become a member of the Gnostic school of thought, though I still would never have been a member of a church. I'm still opposed to them. And this is an important book, and I think everyone that considers themselves well-versed in religion needs to read this, and everyone who considers themselves a Christian needs to read this book. Seek out the Gnostic Gospels. Read them. I'm probably not going to ever read them in depth. I'm not Christian. My religious experience is working just fine for me. I'm familiar with the concepts put forth by this book I just finished reading. And I have experienced many of those concepts from other things, like Buddhism, for example. But what's really important to me, and this is the message I want to bring forth, and again, I am not trying to insult anyone, but this is a message I feel very strongly about. Don't trap Jesus Christ and the concept of God inside this book. Set Jesus free. And more importantly, set yourself free. Embrace your divinity and realize that all of us are gods.